Hi, welcome back. I'm Thomas Allen Harris, host of Family Pictures USA, and we have some special guests that we'd like to bring on. And the first guest is someone I've known a very long time, Yvonne Welbon. Welcome. Yvonne Welbon is an independent filmmaker, scholar, producer, screenwriter based in Chicago. Her films include Living with Pride, Ruth Ellis at 100, Sisters in Cinema, the name of her organization as well, and Monique, and earlier film Monique. Welcome, Yvonne. How are you?
I'm so delighted to be here. I really enjoyed the conversation I just heard with Shari and Raj before. It was really quite lovely.
Thank you, thank you. So you were part of that group in the 80s and 90s as well. That was touring. I think we met at a film festival back then, an LGBT festival, and I think the picture you sent looks like the way looks. I think the picture you sent was a picture of you during that time. Can we see that photograph?
Yeah,
this
actually, I hadn't met you yet. This is from the late 80s. Mm-hmm. And even though this just seems like a normal family portrait with my mom and my siblings, it's unusual because my mom is in the picture. My mother never takes pictures. And so that's why it's kind of special. It's early 80s and it marks a moment, like when we were all just beginning to become who we are.
Mm. Yeah. And your siblings, are any of your siblings queer?
No, well, my sister is a has-been.
Is a what?
Has-been.
Okay, has-been. Okay.
She was a lesbian for like 3 years. So okay. She became a has-been.
Okay, great. So let's actually see. And so when you look at this photograph, what does it make you think about in terms of where you were in your life, thinking about it from this vantage point?
Well, I was living in Taiwan in the late 80s. So this was me coming home for Christmas. You can see we all dressed like in winter clothing. My little sister with her little salt and pepper, like little flip on the side, was in college. That was the year that my brother, who was a record producer, he produced a song called Promised Land, which is a house music classic song. But he didn't know, I think then, when he made the song, that it would be a classic today. And my sister at the time, on the far end, next to my brother, she was working on her PhD in English literature, writing about Toni Morrison before Toni Morrison was Toni Morrison. But she knew that she needed to be part of her dissertation.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So you have two PhDs in your family.
Yeah. My sister, the one that's next to me, she's working on hers now, so she'll have one too.
Okay, great. So here, let's go to the next photograph.
So that's Ruth Ellis, and I made this documentary called Living with Pride, Ruth Ellis at 100, and it's the same photo that's on the cover
of the video.
I just loved this picture of her because she kind of looks gay in this picture to me. And a lot of the other pictures didn't really give that off. And also, it's just a lovely portrait. She's probably in her 50s around this time, maybe around my age, right? And I don't know. It's just I just loved this picture, and it just became something that we used for our postcards and promotional materials. And what's beautiful about Ruth Ellis, if you don't know who she is, when I met her, she was the oldest out African-American lesbian known. And when I met her, she was 97. She was about to be 98. And I decided to make a film commemorating her birthday. And if she was still alive, her birthday would be tomorrow. And she would be 121.
Whoa. Wow. Someone posted on Facebook, Ruth, Detroit Pride.
Yeah, and the Ruth Ellis Center is having a screening of the film tomorrow, a free screening of Living with Pride, Ruth Ellis at 100. It's at 3:00. And if you go to the Ruth Ellis...
Can we go to the next picture, please?
Oh.
Okay, yeah. So this is Ruth when she's close to like in the film, right? 90.
Yeah,
She's in her.
well, yeah. We wanted to have a photo so you could see what it looked like to be 100-year-old Black lesbian, and that's like we use that on the back of the cover of the DVD.
And so tomorrow, so people who are in Detroit tomorrow can see the film.
Oh, it's online. So I think if you go to the Ruth Ellis Center, you can log in, and it's the way to celebrate her birthday tomorrow.
Okay, so go to Ruth Ellis Center tomorrow online and see Yvonne Welbon's wonderful film. I love that film, and I also love the recreations that you do in the film. Which actually, as I was talking about some of the, working with actors, I recall, your own strategy as well.
Yeah.
Yvonne, this is just the tip of the iceberg. We got to do some more, but thank you so much for being a part of this, making a queer family album.
Thank you for having me. And I'm looking forward to the rest of the show.
Okay. Bye-bye. So next we have PJ Raval. And PJ Raval is an award-winning filmmaker as well, Filipino-American filmmaker whose work explores the overlooked subculture and identity of marginalized LGBTQ folks. And I met PJ, you, I think, when you were 18 or 19. You were one of my first students when I first started teaching at UCSD.
That is true. I mean, it has been some time.
Yeah, and so it's just been amazing to follow your career, and watch these wonderful films that, explore so many different sides of, our community. So I want to start with your first photograph, which I think was taken outside of this country. Shall we go to PJ's image?
Yeah, so this is actually a photo of my parents on their wedding day. And my parents are both, from the Philippines, born and raised in the Philippines, but they met in New York City. So from my understanding, this photograph was taken somewhere, I think in Queens. Yeah, and what I love about this photograph is I remember seeing it once when I was a kid, and I didn't really think much of it, but now as an adult, looking at it makes me really think about my parents, being young immigrants here in the United States, and my mom's in a mini skirt. My dad looks really happy. I don't know who's around them. So there's something for me really magical about this photograph, because I almost look at it and think about, like, wow, in contemporary terms, like, these are people that I could have been friends with. This is something that people that I could probably relate to. But as a child, it just seems so far off in its kind of, conception of where this photograph was taken.
And let's go to the next photograph. So you grew up with these photographs in an album, PJ, or what?
Yeah, so the previous photograph I had only seen once or twice, and I think it was somewhere in a photo album that my sister actually has. And then this photograph my sister gave to me, and I remember it used to be hanging in our hallway somewhere, which is why you can see the circle around it is from where it was faded. And I actually have the original here, and I didn't pull this photograph out for many years, but I always kind of knew, for whatever reason, looking at it, it made me think about, it made me think that maybe it was taken at an airport or something. And there's something about it that always makes me think of kind of just the family unit, right? Like, it was a lot of my childhood memories are about being with my mother, with my sister. My dad was a workaholic. He was always at work, but just, for this, pulling it out and looking at the back, it actually says Narita Airport, Japan, which makes me realize this was taken at an airport. And I think it's actually the first time I was going to the Philippines. So my family was probably flying to the Philippines, and there was a layover in Narita. And my guess is my dad probably took this photograph, which I never have thought about or never even asked if that's the case. So it now actually has a different kind of meaning and value to me in a strange way. So yeah,
I love that. I love that discovery. And see, the analog, the great thing about having an analog or print photograph is that you have a lot more information. Yeah. But let's actually go to the next photograph.
Sure. Okay. So this is a photograph that was taken on my wedding day, which was Last year I got married. This is my partner, Curran
And
Nault.
what's his name?
Curran Nault.
Uh-huh.
And I love this photograph because a friend took it, and I am clearly ecstatic in this. But thinking about the first photograph that I shared, it really kind of makes me relate back to that photograph. And not to get too personal, but I never really, growing up a queer person of color in the United States, I never really thought about myself getting married to anyone. That wasn't really in what I thought would be my experience here. And yet here we are, right? So I kind of love this photograph in relation to thinking about that photograph of my parents. It makes me wonder if they ever thought that, that I would have a wedding photograph of my own. I certainly didn't think that. So yeah, and so I don't know, there's something there about that relationship which I really love.
And I also love your styling, the matching outfit, which I didn't see at first, but now I totally see it. Okay, let's go to the next and last photograph. Whoa!
Yeah. I love this photograph. This photograph was taken by a good friend of mine who's also a filmmaker, Patrick Bresnan. And these are the ladies of Lafitte's. They are performers at a bar called Robert's Lafitte, and in the center is Robert's Lafitte, Robert Maynor. And Robert owns a bar in Galveston, Texas, which is kind of known as self-proclaimed, actually, the longest running gay bar in the state of Texas. And I made a documentary called Before You Know It. And Robert and all these ladies of Lafitte's were in that documentary. So this photo was taken when we were premiering the film in Galveston. So we were actually just down the street from the bar, and I love that everyone dressed up. And of course, at the moment of like, let's take a photo, they just decided to pick me up and hoist me across. But that bar in particular is really special because it's a place where I think a lot of people who are estranged from their family, largely queer, largely trans, I think it's a lot of people who found a family in this bar space and I think there's something really magical about that place, really loving about that place. And so I love this photograph because I feel like it reminds me of that. And funny enough, I'm the type of person who I think in the process of looking for photographs, I realize I actually have a lot of photographs. I never print them. I never hang them. They're like, digitized or whatever. But this one I actually have. I actually, the friend of mine printed this and put it into a frame. And so it's actually hanging in my living room.
I love it. It certainly deserves it. It certainly deserves pride of place. I love that.
Yeah.
So thank you so much, PJ. And I want to tell people you can see PJ's films Before You Know It, about aging in the LGBT community, and also Call Haganda. And you should definitely see them. We're putting PJ and all the other special guests bios in our Facebook group. So check them out. And please follow him and Yvonne and everyone else who's coming.
Thanks
PJ,
for having me.
It's so great.
Congratulations.
Thank you. So I also have been asked to tell people that they could donate to our project so that we can continue to do this and family pictures as well. So you can donate. There is you can go to our website www.familypicturesusa.com and make a donation. And now that I've said that, we'll go to our next guest, and our next guest is Cecilia Aladarondo. And let's call her, hey girl, how are you?
Hi.
Good to see you.
Good to see your face.
So, Cecilia is an award-winning filmmaker. Her film Memories of a Penitent Heart, which I had the pleasure of working on as a consultant and through Firelight Media, a mentor, has just been done amazing work in terms of thinking about AIDS and family secrets and the kinds of, and also personal memory and archives. And I'm so glad you're here.
I'm so happy to see you.
Let's go to your first film. I do want to talk to you about your next film, but let's go to your the first photograph of Cecilia's. Okay, Cecilia, tell us about this image.
Well, it's funny because it's a little bit of a trick picture because, as you know, there's another photograph behind it. I mean, what I can say is that I made this film about my family, and particularly about this uncle that I never knew, the man pictured here. He died when I was 6, and his name was Miguel, and he grew up in Puerto Rico and left Puerto Rico to go to New York to become an actor on Broadway, like so many other people seeking fame and fortune. You know, it's a cliche, but cliches are true. And in this case, as a gay man, he loved the theater. He loved being an actor, director, lots of things. And so he moved to New York, and then but he died when I was only 6 years old and he was 31. So I grew up with this kind of legend of this, like, actor, uncle, kind of larger than life figure. And
let's go to the next photograph, please. Go ahead.
Yeah. So basically, the previous photograph, I mean, it's complicated because, as you can see, they're basically the same photograph, but they're two versions of the same photograph. So this particular photograph here was in the possession of my family. The previous photograph was in the possession of my uncle's partner, who disappeared after he died. So my uncle was gay, he was out, he had a partner. And as he was dying of AIDS, there was a lot of conflict in my family around his sexuality. My family was very Catholic, very religious. And basically people didn't really talk about this side of him as I was growing up. And so as part of the project of making the film, I went looking for his partner. And I found him, and he's still alive, living in California. And when I found him, he had the previous photograph. But what's, I think, very telling is that it was cut. So it was essentially a copy of the same photo, but my family had been cut out of it. And so in the film, you can see it's, the film is essentially an attempt to excavate this lost history. And so it becomes this very real kind of archival search in which, you can think of family archives as symptoms sometimes. There's what remains and what's not there, the sort of telling absence. And so that's something that it was so symptomatic to me. So this is another great example of that. The photo on the right is of my grandmother with my uncle. This is when my uncle was in the hospital. And the photo on the left is my uncle's partner, Aquin. And, again, the photo on the right was in my family's archive. The photo on the left was in Aquin's archive. And you can see that they were basically taken on the same day. So you see what survives, what histories survive and what don't. So in a lot of ways, Memories of a Penitent Heart the film is an attempt to excavate this kind of disappeared queer history that my family, in its sort of traditional values, just couldn't accommodate and effectively erase. So it's an attempt to kind of make right what's been lost.
Mm-hmm. It's really moving because you also stitch all the people that were kind of separated, upon his death, back together to tell this story.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's, I think one of the things that can be kind of complicated in these conflicts, which in fact are all too common, is this way in which, well-meaning, loving people like my grandmother can really kind of campaign to exclude somebody. I grew up with a particular idea of my grandmother as a kind of hero of mine. She was actually a kind of moral compass for me. She taught me what it was to be a good person. And then to find this out, many, many years later, I suspected that there was something wrong and something amiss in the family, but I didn't suspect that my grandmother had sort of effectively erased an entire relationship, which is what happened. And so part of what is interesting in this kind of juxtaposition is, what do you do with the people you love when you find out that they're really imperfect and that they've done things that you don't agree with?
Thank you, Cecilia. We have to move on, but I wanted to just mention that you have a new film, which was supposed to premiere Rebecca. and it's now going to have a screening this coming weekend.
Yeah.
So could you just tell very, very briefly what
Yeah.
that film is and where people can see it, and we can even put it up in our Facebook group. And let's go to full screen, please.
Thank you. Yeah, so I made a film about the aftermath of Hurricane Maria in Puerto Rico, and in many ways it's a portrait of everyday life. But it's really about how people recover in the face of disaster, and it's kind of really, unfortunately, very timely and relevant to this moment. And we're doing a one-night sneak preview screening on Saturday night, and I can share the details with you and with the Facebook group. Thank you. And Memories of a Penitent Heart is also available on Vimeo if people want to actually see that film. It's out there.
Oh, wonderful. So good to see you. I look forward to catching up more.
Thank you. Thanks for inviting me. It's a beautiful pleasure.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. So our next guest is E. Patrick Johnson, who I spoke to earlier today, who is a scholar, an artist, a filmmaker, and who was recently appointed dean at Northeastern.
Northwestern.
Northwestern. The dean and a dean designate at the School of Communication at Northwestern University. Sorry, Patrick. Welcome.
Hey, so good to see you.
You too. And I saw Patrick's wonderful film last night about growing up in North Carolina, and it's called Making Sweet Tea, and it's based. It's around his a play that you've been doing, a theater piece that's based on LGBT folks growing up in the South. And it's also a personal film. And it was so wonderful to see that. So we're actually going to start with a personal film, a photograph. So let's go to Patrick's first image.
So I love this picture. I'm 3 here and in a wig. So I always blame my mother for gendering me queer because she just thought, she was doing something cute, but she was giving me my gender accessories. So I am in her wig, 3 years old, standing in front of a stove, which is also apropos because I love to cook and I learned to cook from her. So yeah, I love that. And I'm eating something. I don't know what I'm eating, but it's something fabulous.
And where was this picture stored? Did you find this picture when you were starting to do the research for your film, reconnect with it, or did you grow up with it?
No, I grew up with this picture, but I recently, my mother passed away a year ago. In fact, her funeral was a year ago today.
Wow.
And so going through her things, she had all of these photographs. My mother I call her an archivist. Some people would say hoarding. I say she was an archivist because she kept everything. And she had it labeled. So it was very organized. And so she had all of these photographs of family members, especially her children. But she also had a box with all of the pictures and memorabilia from our lives. So I found letters from her, to her that I had written to her from college. I found my driver's license permit and all of these things. And she had a box for each of her kids.
Wow. I love that. We just did an organizing project on video on our Facebook group, and they say that the best thing to do when you're organizing your materials are put them in boxes and put names on them, and each family, each subject has their own box. So your mom was like, wow, ahead.
Yeah, she was ahead of her time.
Exactly. So now we have another image. And was she also the photographer as well?
No, she wasn't. Well, she was the photographer of that first image, but for this one, she was not, because she's actually in the photo. She's cut out of, but that's part of her shoulder in the picture that's actually leaning over that car, which she nicknamed Tin Lizzie. My mother always named all of her cars. And so this is Tin Lizzie. I love this picture because I'm standing akimbo. I'm age 4 here. So this is around 1971. And that picture is taken at the place where I was born, where I grew up in Hickory, 8th Avenue Drive, 229 8th Avenue Drive, 1-bedroom apartment. And again, my mother is looking over, watching me pose my little akimbo thing here. But it's so queer. I mean, it's just a big old queen. But I learned that pose from her because there's so many pictures of her with that same pose.
The same pose. Wow. You know, as I told you earlier today, I watched your film and it was so heartwarming. And, you know, I've never seen a film that explores queer African American queer identity in the South. You know, both big cities and smaller cities. Like Hickory is a small city, but you know, it's like, and also seeing it through your eyes, you know, was wonderful. It was so inviting.
Oh,
So
thank you.
Thank you for that film.
Shout out to Yvonne, who was a consultant on the film. And it was great to see Shari because I haven't seen Shari in over 20 years since the Black Queer Studies in the Millennium Conference in Chapel Hill. So it's like a little homecoming.
Homecoming. Let's go to the next photograph. So this is actually a still from the film, right?
Yeah, so this is a still from the film, and that's Countess Vivian, who at this time is 96. And what he's showing me is a picture from 1946. His picture from the army. He served in the army in World War II, and he's pulling out that picture to show me. And he was so handsome. Oh my goodness, he's quite a looker. The Countess lived to be 99 years old and 10 months. He died just 2 months shy of his 100th birthday. But this is taken in the Treme in New Orleans, where he was living at the time. And I loved him. And one of the things that I love about this film too is for me, I still hear the clicking of his index fingernail on the glass of the photo, because he was tapping it as he was showing it to me.
You know, when I started putting this together, I didn't, you know, I reached out to different people and I had no idea that there would be this theme of documenting gay elders, you know, that with Yvonne's film and PJ's film and your film, you know, and, you know, without this documentation, I mean, we would not have no idea. It's such a, you know, vacuum in terms of their stories. And, you know, each generation, you know, the curse is that each generation of queer, you know, folks, kids, feel like they have to completely, you know, reinvent the wheel, you know, in terms of there's no history, and that's beginning to change with films like this.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much. I look forward to our next conversation, and congratulations on your recent deanship, and it's really exciting. How are you feeling about it?
Oh, you know, I'm flying by the seat of my pants, but it's all gonna be good. I've been telling people though, I feel like Obama in 08. But it's all good.
You have our prayers and good thoughts.
Thank you, Thomas. All right.
Thank you, Yvonne. Bye-bye. So I will just say, again, people can go to our website to donate, to keep our lights on through these challenging times of telling stories which need to be told. Our next guest is someone I've also known. I think I've known her since I was in kind of late teens, a classmate of mine, college classmate of mine, Nancy Cates. Nancy, welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm so honored to be here. Hi, everyone.
Hey, and where are you dialing in from?
I'm on Cape Cod. Don't tell anyone. I snuck across the country. I guess this is public, but supposed to be California. Don't tell anyone. And I just want to say it's so moving to think about queer family. And I just have to get this out there before I forget to say it. Is like, I always wanted a queer sibling. So I'm totally jealous of all you people with queer siblings. Because, you know, of course I have friends, other friends as well who have queer siblings. But, you know, it's a very different experience, I imagine. So. Well,
should I call you Sister Nancy then?
It looks like we're cousins. I don't know where, you know, I don't know what the delineation, but I think we're in queer cousin land for sure. But
queer cousin.
Very honored.
Nancy. So we're going to go to your first photograph, which is actually a little bit of a montage of 3 photographs. Let's go to Nancy's image.
So wait, there were supposed to be 2 other ones. So that's my those are the Cateses. And, I look so like such a dyke in this picture. I mean, it was probably taken, I don't know, 17, 18 years ago. And I just like, it's like, which one's gay? Not the subtle question. But I was going to kind of contrast this with the next photograph, because I realized that queer family for me is extremely different than biological family. And I don't have, kids of my own, but I have chosen family, and it's, really important to me, and it's very different. So these are some of my friends, some of whom Thomas, and unfortunately, several people in this photograph are no longer with us. But one of the things I was realizing when I was looking for photographs, because I was kind of frantically looking for these before I left California, is that, that queer family is how you define it. It's not necessarily, I mean, lots of people have kids now, or, thank God we have marriage equality, but, these people are my queer family. They're not all queer, but they're queer enough. And as a group, they represent a certain kind of family unit. And it just doesn't look like my existing family. So that was why I put these two photographs in here. They're not the world's greatest photographs, and I didn't choose them for that reason. I chose them more to try to explain that in a way that like we're all part of multiple families as well. And we can skip that next photograph if you want, but I also had a picture of my documentary family in Berkeley.
Let's go to that.
Yeah, I think they may have taken it out for time. So this is Byard Rustin, the subject of my film Brother Outsider, which premiered in 2004. And this particular photograph always meant a lot to me.
Can I just stop you just for a sec? Do people know who Byard Rustin is? Does everyone out there know who Byard Rustin is? Nancy, if you could maybe, before you tell us why you chose this photograph, if you could just give a little bit of a synopsis on who Byard Rustin is.
Rustin was a gay civil rights leader who started working on racial equality and peace activism in the early 40s. So he did things like, he did a bus protest in 1948. He did sit-ins in restaurants in the early 40s. And, a lot of the stuff that we think about with Rustin is, can we go back to the other photograph, is, we think about, the freedom riders in the 60s. Well, he was doing that, 15 or 20 years before they did. He was a chief advisor to Martin Luther King, and he was, openly gay for the time. It's kind of hard to define open, but certainly people in the movement knew that he was gay. He didn't hide it. I think he quite enjoyed his sexuality. And it was also interesting, just as an aside, being a woman trying to imagine this man's, sexuality. It's, it's if you're a woman trying to imagine like what it's like to be a gay man is a little bit beyond, I tried really hard, but anyway, I mean, so the reason
it was a great film. It's a beautiful film, powerful.
Thank you.
Can we go to the next image?
Did you want to say one thing about that film, about that image?
Yes.
So I always felt like I had to answer to this guy. He looks kind of annoyed. Like he looks like, Kate's, get it together, make a good film. When you're making a biography of someone who's dead, like they can't really weigh in. But I always felt like I was in relationship to this photograph, that Rustin was kind of like my activist grandfather or something. And if I didn't, he looks kind of a little frustrated right there. And it's like, I had to answer to the sort of not happy Byard Rustin who wanted us to make a better film than maybe we thought we could. So that's why this is here.
Wow. Someone said in the Facebook chat, Rustin was part of his also a frat brother, and he was brilliant. And he did guide a lot of the younger folks, including Martin Luther King. Can we go to the next photograph? And also John Lewis, who's actually pictured in this photograph in the center with Byard Rustin on the left. And so, it was.
So Rustin had been like a young activist and a rebel. He called himself an angelic troublemaker at times. But by the time the March on Washington happened in 1963, he was more of an elder statesman, and John Lewis was the young rebellious person. And John Lewis was asked to tone down his speech for the March on Washington because it was too out there. And that was sort of an interesting dynamic. I think that John Lewis really looked up to Byard Rustin, but I think he was annoyed that Rustin wanted to kind of like contain him a bit. There were certain people on the far left in the civil rights movement who felt like the March on Washington wasn't radical enough, but it was the largest demonstration that had ever been held in the history of the United States at that time, and Byard Rustin organized it. So I also thank you for the opportunity to remember Representative Lewis, who I got to meet a couple of times. It was a great honor.
I did as well. A wonderful honor, and just really, it's a sad loss. Nancy, thank you for the opportunity to share your family album with us, an extended family album. Where can people see your Bayard Rustin film?
I'm supposed to know this. Like, I think it's on Google Play. You can get the DVD on Netflix, but not the streaming. In fact, I'm trying to get Netflix to put it on streaming right now because I think it speaks to this moment. So I don't know if any of you could write to Netflix and ask them to put a streaming service. But if you Google Brother Outsider, The Life of Bayard Rustin, there are a few options. And of course, we have a website, rustin.org, where you could buy a copy. So thank you so much, Thomas. And congratulations on your anniversary of this important film.
Thank you so much, Nancy. I'll speak to you soon.
Okay.
Okay. So our next guest is a journalist and a filmmaker, a writer, Luchina Fisher. Are you there? Oh, so good. You. And I understand, I was told by E. Patrick Johnson that you guys were in college together for a period of time.
Yes, we were.
Family connections. Extended family.
Totally. Hi, E. Patrick. Hi, Yvonne.
That's right, Yvonne. So we're gonna go to your first photograph, which features some siblings. So tell us who's in this picture, where is this picture taken, and why is this picture important?
Oh, this is a very important picture. This is my brother, Gary Fisher, who was an artist and writer. He is on the left. I am in the middle. And that is my sister, our sister, Leslie Fisher, who is leaning into my shoulder. And this is taken on Gary's birthday on June 19th, 1993. And it was a very special birthday because this was the first time I was seeing Gary after he let us know that he had AIDS. And so I flew out to San Francisco to be with him. He had just come out of the hospital, and he was having a celebration with some of his friends. So I met his friends. They brought him hats because he had lost his hair in getting treatment for Kaposi sarcoma. And somebody had given him a leopard, and that is that stuffed animal that you see in his pocket that I am leaning into. The leopard was sort of like, so he wouldn't feel alone with his spots. And as kids, we always played with stuffed animals. We made up a lot of silly games. Gary was the game master. And I'm sure he was saying something very funny or silly. And so I leaned in to snuggle the stuffed leopard, and I was probably feeling uncomfortable, but was so glad to be there. And yeah, it's a very, very special photograph to me.
Yeah, I just want to also mention that, I, after Gary's death, and even before I knew you, because we just met with this year, but Gary in Your Pocket, which was produced, a book that was posthumously published. Can we go back to yes, it's Gary in Your Pocket was a book of Gary's writings, which, I'm not sure if my brother Lyle Ashton Harris gave me the book or if someone else gave it to me or told me I should get it. But it was just so instrumental in terms of my own finding my own authentic voice, and seeing the importance of, my own writing at that time. And then when you and I were in a panel last month, I realized that you were siblings. I was like, that book is so important to me that it began this whole other dialogue. So yeah, I just want to say that I think the book, I'm not sure if it's out of print or in print, but people should definitely check it out. Gary in My Pocket.
Gary in Your Pocket. Yeah, it's still in print, and you can get it on Amazon. I think I saw there were like 6 copies left, but I'm sure they will publish more. And yeah, Gary was instrumental in me finding my voice as well. I love that he's done that for a number of Black gay men and of the current generation as well. Jeremy O. Harris, the playwright, also considers Gary one of those inspirational voices. But Gary was instrumental in getting me to find my voice and to do something about the AIDS epidemic. He really wanted me to point out that Black families were impacted and how they were impacted, and we just weren't seeing images of them. So he was like, Luchina, you need to do something about this. And, you know, being that he was my big brother, I was like, okay, I will. And I am.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Thank you. So let's go to the next photograph. And speaking of finding your voice, you are coming out soon with a new film, Mama Gloria. And so tell us about this photograph.
Well, that is Mama Gloria in the middle. Look at that pose. I love it. That's me on the left, and that's my daughter, Gia, Gia Parr. And I have to thank E. Patrick Johnson, actually, for introducing me to Gloria Allen, who was looking for somebody to help her with her memoir. And when I read about Gloria, I was like, oh my God, she needs to be seen and heard. Let's put this woman in a film. And she loved the idea. And as it were, when E. Patrick reached out, I was heading to Chicago with my daughter. And she was part of this storytelling campaign where she was going to be speaking to some companies on Coming Out Day. My daughter is transgender, and she came out at age 12 in our small town here and has since become sort of a national voice for her generation. And so we traveled to Chicago, and we managed to connect with Gloria. And Gloria spent the day with us. And this was actually on the day that Chicago was unveiling the Marsha P. Johnson plaque on the Legacy Walk. So that's us standing in front of Marsha P. Johnson's image. And it was on that day that Gloria was like, oh yeah, we're doing this film. And for my daughter, this is kind of a gift that I hope to give her. And it's this connection to aging that Gloria provides as a 74-year-old Black trans woman. She came out in the 60s before Stonewall. She was certainly out to her family, and her mother and grandmother were really supportive of her. And that's an important message because I'm supportive of my daughter. And I know that that's in large part because of my brother and growing up with him and in our family and seeing, you know, where he lacked some support from my dad and how that impacted him. So I was certain that if I became a parent, I was going to do something different. And as it turned out, I had to. So Gloria is, she's a gift to me. I feel she's adopted me. She's adopted Gia as her granddaughter. And the film will hopefully be out this fall. We are finishing up the post-production, and we are all so eager for the world to meet Gloria Allen. She is fantastic.
Well, we look forward to helping you get the word out and doing whatever we can do. It's so important. And, you know, this story, and she's so vibrant and so beautiful. I saw the trailer, and so it's very exciting. And it's also just wonderful to see a mom who is, you know, going to bat for, you know, for her daughter, you know, and, you know, in this, you know, time when so many people, you know, particularly trans people find themselves alone, you know, without their parents, because, you know, gender can be one of the last frontiers, is perhaps one of the last frontiers in terms of people, you know, being accepted. You know, I think in E. Patrick's film, Making Sweet Tea, you know, one of the characters actually talked about that, you know, the mother's resistance to it. So it's just that model is so powerful and so important. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me. This is such a wonderful, wonderful experience being with everybody and sharing our photo albums. I love it.
Thank you, Luchina. And I'll speak to you soon.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye. Good luck with finishing. So we are down to our last three special guests. Our next special guest is also an old friend. See, I actually, when I realized I was going to do this photo share, initially we were going to do another program, and I realized about a week and a half ago I was going to do, I need to do a family pictures photo share and create a career album. So I looked through my phone book and saw all the people, and also my Facebook feed, saw all the people that I knew that I wanted to, foreground. And so this next person, someone I've known since the 80s as well, Keith Gemereck. Will you join me?
Hi, Thomas.
Hey!
What an exciting night. This has just been fabulous.
Oh, it's wonderful. It's good to see you. Oh, wow, I'm seeing your home. It's the first time I've seen your home. Now, I used to actually visit you all the time when we lived in Brooklyn. You had this amazing loft. And in fact, in Vintage Families of Value, as you reminded me in a text earlier today, when Paul was doing his dance, it was in Keith's loft in Brooklyn. What part of Brooklyn was that, Keith?
Well, we used to call it Park Slope, but it really wasn't. It's now called Gowanus because we were right on the Gowanus Canal. It was a warehouse district that nobody wanted to go to, but it was the perfect place to land for me. Because that loft became not only my studio and my darkroom where I lived, but it was kind of a community center. We used to have LGBT gay pride parties before they had them anywhere in Brooklyn. We used to have like 500 people dancing in my loft back in the early 80s.
I remember that. I remember those parties. I had a great time. And also the dark room. And I would go and use your dark room. And I think Spike Lee's brother was your roommate, right?
David, yep.
David Lee. And so it was like so funny because I was like meeting David Lee in this context, And that was in like the late 80s. And I haven't seen him in a while. But, let's go to your first photograph.
Okay. I decided to bring this picture up because I have, like Nancy earlier said, I have no gay siblings. I keep searching. There's not a gay person in my lineage anywhere, although I keep hunting. But anyhow, in the late 70s, I was living with my grandmother because my grandfather was dying in the hospital. But I got to snoop through their house and I found boxes and boxes full of old photographs. And my grandfather was a photographer back in the 19-teens. And this is a picture he took of his father, his older brother's baby, and his two siblings. There were 13 children in the family outside of Buffalo. And as proof, here's my grandfather's signature on the back of the photograph.
Wow, hold it up. Can you make that screen bigger so we can see that, Josh? Wow. And his signature.
Yeah.
So it was on your paternal side because you have the same name.
Yes, exactly. So, for me, being gay is about looking behind the facade, like what's real behind what I'm looking at. And that's what photography is doing for me. I'm able to discover so much. And my grandfather was actually disassociated from his family because after my great-grandfather died, my grandfather, as the oldest son still living on the farm, was in charge of the family estate. Something happened. He blew it. He lost the farm. And all of the other siblings resented this. And then maybe we really don't know the story, but I never got to know any of his family till after he died. And his living siblings welcomed me into their life. So another reveal.
Wow. I love that story. Were any of them in this picture?
Yes, Louise, the youngest girl in the front, she was still alive.
Wow. I love that story.
My parents got to know her as well. So,
Someone says, wow, the dungarees and the bales of hay, incredible. I thought it was the Midwest when I saw it. Who knew it was Buffalo?
This is upstate New York, and it's a photograph that my grandfather clearly staged. So he had an artistic bent, which I'm very happy to see.
Well, let's go to the next photograph. This is also a Buffalo photograph.
Yeah, I moved to Brooklyn when I was 30. So I had 30 years of being in Buffalo. And when I was a photo researcher there, I was always snooping around looking for old photographs. And I went into an antique store. I bought an old camera there, but I also was snooping around. And the guy said, well, maybe you would be interested in these photographs. And he pulled out this portfolio from down below. And he said, I can't tell you a thing about these images. I'm only selling them with that agreement because there are people in drag, cross-dressing people in this portfolio. I can sell them to you as they are, but I can't answer any questions. And I said, oh, come on, you've got to tell me something. He said, well, I do know that there were drag parties in these fancy mansions on Delaware Avenue in Buffalo, but that's as much as I can tell you. And this is just one of them. There's more than a dozen pictures of people in drag from the 1920s. And
Wow.
It's an ongoing research project, and I'm finding out some interesting things. I found out where one of the balls was held at the Saturn Club on Delaware Avenue. And I found out who the photographer was. And I found out where his studio was. So, you know, if you dig, you can find.
Yeah. Well, as I said to you earlier, when we go to do our family pictures in Buffalo, we have to call you up and get together and see what we could do to flesh out some Buffalo stories.
You know, Buffalo has an amazing photography history, just amazing.
Mm-hmm.
This is just one example.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of talk. There's some talk now of me doing an exhibition at SEPA Gallery
In Buffalo.
in Buffalo with these vintage drag photos and with photos related to an upcoming image I'm going to show you.
Let's go to that next image.
Okay, this is Ann Hubbard. I worked on a project with Madeline Davis, who wrote with Elizabeth Kennedy the definitive study of lesbian bar culture, working class lesbian bar culture in Buffalo. It's called Boots of Leather, Slippers of Gold. It's a really important book. But all of the people that they interviewed over 2 decades were not named. So now years later, Madeline and I teamed up, and we went and interviewed who she considered the LGBT political elders in Buffalo. And Anne clearly is one of those people because she organized house parties when the lesbian bars were not exactly friendly to people like her. And plus they were dangerous places, and the police kept raiding. There was a lot of fighting going on, but Anne was just like this lovely, amazing party animal who would raise parties in people's homes where people would stay for days, play cards, drink to their heart's content. And the way that Madeline looks at this is that this is the beginnings of political organizing. It wasn't thought of as political organizing, but it clearly was. And out of that organizing came, years later, and established a group called Shades for Black lesbians in Buffalo. It wasn't supposed to be for Black lesbians, but that's what it became because white people are so uptight. And, so we collected oral histories and photographed these stellar people in Buffalo.
Wow, I love this photograph, and I love her energy, and I cannot wait to see this show, and I hope you bring it to New York as well.
Well, we're going to put it together at SEPA Gallery, where the funding started for Gay Pride next June.
Wonderful. Well, Keith, thank you so much for joining us, and thank you for posting some of these images on Facebook so I could find them and rope you into our Queer Family album production.
Yeah.
And I look forward to following up with you very shortly.
Thank you so much. I'm honored to be here.
Okay.
Thomas.
You too. So our next guest is a very special guest as well. And it's someone who I met 2 or 3 years ago. I teach right now at Yale University, and I met this lovely person, Brittany Bland, when I first went up and spoke at a mutual friend of ours class. And Brittany and I started talking. I asked her to do a blog for me. I joined the faculty at Yale. Brittany took my class and gave me good scores, and then did this amazing MFA project in the School of Theater that used her own family archives. And it was, I mean, something that, you know, all of my colleagues at, you know, at the university are talking about, people outside are talking about. Brittany is this amazing projection artist. And so I just wanted to, just got her MFA. And so, and we've already started working together. So Brittany, let's go to, welcome.
Hi, Thomas. It's so great to see you, and thank you for inviting me, having me here. This is just absolutely wonderful. I want to get in and just go ahead and start talking about this first image, which I have another one, which is part of that collection, which is of my my father and my uncle. They're twin brothers. And this was taken, I mean, it looks like they're probably in their like early 20s here. And it really just, I think, showcased like a beautiful bond and love between two men, which I don't think is very common or normalized in our culture and our society. And these two wonderful people just, if it wasn't for their own, you know, compassion and love and empathy and respect, you know, I don't think that I would be able to showcase that in my own work. And I think that in their work as both as storytellers, they were wonderful storytellers and also photographers. I actually have another photo here, which is like, you can clearly see my uncle and my father, you know, taking a very like stylized, wonderful shot. You know, I think all of those values that they held really were obvious in the work that they did and the care that they were as parents and as people.
Beautiful, beautiful. And are they still alive today?
Well, my father passed away when I was 19. After suffering a stroke. My uncle is still alive and living in Canada, but he also unfortunately suffered a stroke about 2 years ago. So there's this whole kind of like interesting story about legacy and how we transcend grief that became the center point of my thesis.
And I just want to say, Shari Frilot, who I want to introduce you to, her nephews are twins, and we were just on a birthday party with her maybe a month or two ago, and this photograph reminds me of seeing them and the twinning energy, moving images during that birthday party, Zoom party. Let's go to the next photograph.
Absolutely. So this picture is of me. I have no idea how old I am there, but I chose this photo because of what it shows and also what it doesn't show. When I see this, I see so many, like in my mind, I see so many different versions of myself kind of splintering, you know, from these moments from my childhood and my adolescence and like the present day of like who I am. And I see like this like beautiful, like wonderful child. I'm very, I have the same looks, you know, my entire life, you know, I have kind of the same faces, and it's just really interesting to see that. But I also just see different people, and I'm really interested in trying to continue the storytelling from this moment in my life, because when my father passed away, my father and my uncle were our family's archivists, so to speak. Our families, they really told our stories and archived our photos. So once my father passed away, that process stopped. It kind of stopped there. And I'm really interested in seeing, you know, photos in our family as they are now, you know, moving on from this point from when I was a much younger child and like an adolescent. And that's just really what this photo brings to mind to me. Yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you. Let's go to the next photo.
So yeah, so this one's kind of dark, but it's actually a photo from my thesis project. So I really in that year was going through many things, you know, and one of the major things was trying to like deal with myself, like get myself out there as an artist and a storyteller, and you know, what does that mean to me? And I thought that in order to fully do that, I had to really ground myself in who I was, and I hadn't really dealt with that loss and that memory in a way, and I felt that I was holding on to those memories in like a place of pain and grief, and I wasn't really doing myself, my family, or my father's memory a service by keeping it there. And by like, so I went home, of course, and we have we could fill like a warehouse with all the photos that we have, and I went through them all of them, and brought back hundreds of photos and went through them and tried to find, you know, a story, tried to find my voice in that. And so this project is really the culmination of my time in grad school, finding myself as an artist. I think that there are not many people of color, Black projection designers out there, and so it's hard to see yourself, you know, as that person when you don't see that reflected in that industry. And also finding a way that like your stories, you know, matter, that your voice matters. And so I found that through going back and finding these images and finding my story. And I used an animation copy stand, which is you know, used for mainly like stop animation and things like that. And I live projected myself presenting the photos, and it's projected in a larger format, so you can see me working with my history like literally, and then also watch the movie kind of version of it, the documentary of it happening as well. It just became this really interesting live theatrical documentary-esque performance that was I don't know, it was truly amazing. I interviewed my mother and my uncle, and my mother is actually narrating during this whole process, and I'm kind of going along and laying photos and telling a visual story to go ahead with the auditory one. So yeah, that's my presentation there. But yeah, it was just a truly astounding time and project. I actually had the pleasure of showcasing it to my entire family. Well, most of my family at graduation, the day we graduated, I walked, and then I had an extra surprise for them, and I took them into this room where I'd done my thesis, and I performed it again for them. And it was just a wonderful healing process. You know, I think that we had all kind of locked ourselves in this moment of like grief and not really transcended that. So yeah.
Such a moving story, and also, you know, the work is so beautiful and so powerful, and you know, people, as I said, people are still talking about it, and I'm looking forward to your future work. I know you're collaborating with a lot of different folks, including me and our team, and I'm really grateful that you're in our lives, and that and for your work, and I'm looking forward to seeing the next big project that you do as well.
Thank you, Thomas.
Thank you, Brittany. So we've come to the end of our program, folks. We've had some amazing folks who have shared their family photographs, and I'm going to say goodbye to Brittany right now. And I just wanted to thank everyone for you know, coming and sharing their photographs and the stories, and you know, kind of adding things to this virtual album that we're creating. I do want to thank also our sponsors for this project, the National Endowment for the Arts, Third World Newsreel, which has been our host, and particularly JT Tagagi, who has just been like, you know, the Uber producer on this event. I'd like to thank Black Public Media, Buy.org, the Documentary Forum at CCNY, NewFest, Queer Art Film, Reverie TV, Sisters in Cinema, and Visual Aids for helping to make this event possible. The film Vintage Families of Value is streaming for you right now on our Family Pictures USA YouTube channel, and it will do so for the next 2 days. And you can also rent it if you're in the academy and use it in classrooms. So you can contact TWN.org. That's Third World Newsreel, TWN.org for educational sales. And, you know, every time you take a step, you never know where it will lead. And so about 2 months ago, we had the idea to do this 25th anniversary event. And out of that, Comcast actually came and decided to do a festival on a queer festival, virtual queer festival in the Beltway. And they decided to use Vintage for the first, program Vintage for the first 2 weeks of that festival. And they also had us get together with several of the families in the film, and we did a panel, Zoom panel discussion on Monday, which they're editing, and it's going to be broadcast on the 30th. So you'll see the folks and get updates from some of the folks in the film. So keep posted on our Family Pictures YouTube, Family Pictures Facebook channel, so we could keep you informed and when you could see that. I also wanted to thank behind the scenes Josh Van Beemer, who is my former student at Yale, who is coordinating the entire event. He's just been amazing. Thank you, Josh. And he also is serving as VJ, the photo VJ. And I'd also like to thank our Family Pictures office coordinator, Quentin Parker, who is behind the scenes dealing with tech and made everything smooth and hosted a lot of the people as they came in to do their tech. So that, I think, is it. I wanted to thank Ian Lawrence for helping to ignite this idea with an email 2 months ago or so, and everyone for being present and for welcoming these folks. If there are any last questions, we'll take them, but it seems like everyone's been making comments and there haven't been any questions, but feel free to join our Facebook group if you have some ideas for future community photo shares, or you want to think about inviting Family Pictures USA to your town for one of our upcoming episodes. We're planning season 2 right now and deciding on our next 10 cities or locations, because we also work in rural areas like Southwest Florida and also North Carolina. At various parts of North Carolina. Feel free to reach out to us at info@familypicturesusa.com. Thanks again, everyone, for being here. And it's been my pleasure and a joy to spend time with such amazing folks.